Welcome to Iron Sights. This podcast candidly seeks to create opportunities and deliver impact by sharing the experiences and wisdom of successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders who unapologetically aim to win in health, fitness, business, and life. I'm your host, Scott Howell. Welcome to Old School Meets New School. Tradition meets innovation, and imperfection meets excellence. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, here we are. We're back in the studio today. We've got a new friend of mine, Alex Maclin.
What's going on?
Hey, man. Welcome to the ISP studio.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, this is legit.
Hey, thanks, man. I mean, we're at least trying to look good.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'm stoked to have you here. There's I always love talking to nutrition coaches, and we'll talk all about that today. But a little bit about you. You're coming to us from Austin, Texas, and you spent a ton of time in the world of fitness, but particularly in the world of weightlifting. You were competitive there. You've coached weightlifters, you've coached athletes for a long time, and then that kind of evolved, and you met a lot of people and did a lot of cool stuff. And you were actually a host on the Barbell Shrugged Podcast, which is a massively successful podcast with some really great guys.
Yeah,
and here we are. We're like in kind of this weird world of all this, very few degrees of separation. We got connected through our mutual friend, Lori Christine King, who this is awesome, actually. So I'm getting like a double dose this week, is out visiting, doing some work with some of our good buddies just down the street at Mind Pump. And you're here with us today in the studio, but we've got both of you at the house's house guests. This is like an amazing experience. I'm getting the full deal. So I'm excited to have you here, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So just that kind of brings the connection piece in, but I want to learn all about you. We've had some time to kind of connect and learn a little bit about you and your history. I've learned a little bit about you over the time, and I think what intrigues me about you is your journey, your pathway to getting into nutrition coaching. So I want to peel back some of the layers of the onion there and talk a little bit about that journey. But what's interesting is through all the journeys, when I meet coaches and great coaches like you and we sit down, there's always so many common threads. We find that there's so much stuff that we end up, it's very much the same. And you always wonder, like, I wonder what that guy Alex is doing that might be different, than what I'm doing or what we've been doing. We all wound up at the breakfast table this morning. You know what? We're all doing the same fucking thing.
Yep.
We're all sitting there eating our breakfast, working on our laptops. But there's a journey piece there that got you to here. And tell us about who Alex is and, where you came from and how you got to where you're at. Start and finish wherever you want, man.
Okay. I was going to ask you, where you want me to start?
You can start from, once upon a time or wherever, man.
I was a young boy. No, I guess first for a serious into fitness was back in 2010. So I was in grad school in Memphis. That's where I'm from. I'm originally from Memphis. And I was going to grad school for biomedical engineering. It was kind of one of those things where I didn't really know what I wanted to do after college. And so I was just like, well, I don't have a plan. So I'm just going to go to grad school.
Keep going.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep going to school. I mean, that's, yeah.
You knew that. You knew how to do that.
Yeah. But basically, during this time, like in my early 20s, very, very unhealthy. Partied a lot, as most, young 20-year-olds tend to do. Wasn't really in great shape. I had gotten up to, over college period of time, like gotten up to like 200 something pounds, and I'm 5'8", so it's like not a good 200 pounds. It wasn't lifting, wasn't doing exercise, just really just headed towards a path of poor health. And then ironically, one day at a bar that I was at, that I normally frequented, ran into Doug Larson, who is still of Barbell Shrugged, and was talking to him, and we sparked up a conversation because we started talking about CrossFit, because the friends that we were with, two of the girls His wife's probably gonna like this, but he was trying to get with one of these girls. I'm gonna tell the story. I'm gonna tell the story the way the story is. But anyways, so they were doing CrossFit, and so he was like, "Yeah, you should come check it out." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I think I can do it." He's like, "Yeah, come on tomorrow." And I don't think he believed that I was gonna show up the next day. Because
how many times has he had that conversation?
Right, exactly. Especially at a bar. Like, you mean like people out, like I'm sitting here just, partying, and he's like, "Hey, he's not gonna come tomorrow." But anyways, I show up the next day, and then he walks me through the warm up of this workout, and I'm just like, "All right, so that was it, right?" And he's like, "No, that's just the warm up," and I'm sitting here dying already. He asked me
on the face.
Yeah, he asked me to do like 10 pull-ups, and I couldn't even do really like 3. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I was a grown man. I was like 24 years old. I couldn't do 3 pull-ups. And had me go through this workout, which was, now in hindsight, like not that bad, but it took me like 45 minutes to do, and took everybody else like 10
half
minutes.
The time.
Yeah, like 10 minutes. And literally, the whole time during the workout, he's like, "If you need to go throw up, just make sure you go outside.
Feel free to go out there.
Go outside." I was like, "No, I'm good. Anyways, so I finished this workout, and I'm sure, he did not expect me to come back. Mm-hmm. And he followed up with me, and I literally, like 2 weeks, I could not walk because I was so sore. I'd never felt that kind of feeling in my entire life. I thought I was like, oh yeah, I lifted weights. I ran track in high school, cross country, whatever. I thought I could handle all that stuff, and it was like literally dying.
Yeah, but how did that make you you feel about yourself?
Exactly, right? Exactly. Well, it flipped a switch, and I was like, you know what? Like, if this is what this is making me feel, like I must have been doing something wrong, or I'm in really bad shape. And I thought I was, or
a little bit of both.
Yeah, both really. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and do this. And started working out there, and got really into weightlifting. Mike Bledsoe, who was also co-host and founder of Barbell Shrugged, he was really into Olympic weightlifting. And at that gym that they own together, they really emphasized the Olympic lifts and strength training. And that's something, again, I had never really, I thought I was strong, right? But I never really did a legit back squat. I remember I couldn't back squat even body weight. Like I was, 180 something pounds, 190 something pounds. I could not back squat body weight at all. Couldn't snatch at all, or more than like 90 pounds.
Yeah, and keeping that relative, you're looking around the gym at the people that are in there. You're people half your size,
half my size,
3 times as much.
Like 50, 60-year-old women, like throwing up weights, and I'm like, can't do that. Like push-ups, pull-ups, could not do anything that now that I know like a fit person, or at least halfway fit, should be able to do. So again, it was like a light bulb that I needed to change what I was doing. And, I got, of course, back in that day too, like paleo was, that was the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not hating on paleo. I did it. And it really did help me like lose the weight and felt better about myself and gotten better health, started eating differently. And I was like, you know what, maybe this is like something. Again, the light bulb is like, I need to be doing this for the rest of my life. I started to change a lot of things that I was doing, like who I was hanging out with. I got made fun of a lot by my friends, right? Because I was choosing a healthier lifestyle.
Over the bars.
Yeah, and they were just, Maclin's like super healthy CrossFit now, like Colt,
shaming you.
Yeah. But it's fine. Like people, whatever. But like I kept up with it. Because, I think I didn't know this at the time, but it was really more, it's like, I feel better doing this. And this is something that, is making me happy and feel good about myself, and I think a lot of things I was doing, at the time was just to substitute, like not feeling like it was like a way to escape. I wasn't dealing with shit. So it's like,
you drink to be distracted.
Exactly.
Right?
To be distracted.
To be distracted.
Exactly.
Go party to be distracted.
Exactly. And now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, like these are all things that are really helping me feel better about myself, more confident, like more capable. And then, I got into weightlifting through Bledsoe, started training that, like, and competing and seriously. And I was like, oh man, like I can do this. This is also fun. This is also, very, building confidence and things like that. And and then the guys, they started Barbell Shrugged sometime after I started training there. Like I think around like 2011, 2012. What's funny is like I remember them starting it, and I was like, "What are y'all doing? Like no one's gonna do that. Like
who's gonna listen?
Who's gonna listen to this?
Who wants to listen to you guys?
And then they started doing it, and then they were like, "Oh, we're gonna sell like training programs." And I've learned better now. It's like I was very skeptical. I'm just a naturally skeptical person.
Okay.
And I was like, who's gonna do that? Like, who's gonna like pay for online training? And sure enough, they started doing it, and then they blew up. They blew up. Yeah, they started doing really, really well. And I think it's because like, you know, at that point in time, like I've been hanging around and I've been training consistently, and I also took a passion to coaching.
Okay. Well, you had some great coaches there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a facility that's doing a lot of things very, very well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like Mike and Doug were like fantastic coaches in multiple ways. And a lot of things that I still learned from, like I still do now as a coach, I learned from them. But I started coaching, you know, weightlifting, and they were like, hey, we're doing these online training programs. We need some help. And
you're pretty good at this.
Yeah. Like
you're into it.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. Like I don't have a background in this stuff. Like I didn't go to school for exercise science. I didn't go to school for nutrition or anything like that. But like, I think like they saw like, hey, he's really passionate about helping people. He's willing to learn. Like, these are things that are qualities that coaches need. And so, I mean, yeah, they took a chance and whatever. They were like, hey, come work for us. And I kind of skirted not wanting to because I was still in grad school wanting to thinking about finishing. But it got to a point where I was fed up with it.
Yep.
And it wasn't like, I think the boiling point for me was I spent like 2 years working on a publication.
You mean for your master's thesis?
Yeah, for my master's. Yep. In grad school, it's kind of like there's a lot of, it's kind of academic hazing. Like you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
There's politics there. There's bureaucracy. Like, you are kissing asses and taking shit.
Yeah. Yep. I spent like 2 years writing this paper, and then, you know, I published this paper was published, and it was completely different than what I wrote. And I was like, because my advisor.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, he edited it heavily, and I was like, you know what?
Because his name's attached.
All right, and I get it. And I'm not saying that's not what he should have done, but it's like, man, like you could have just like
tell me what you're gonna do.
Why were we spending 2 years of my life doing this? And then I think the final straw was like I wrote an article for Barbell Shrugged that we posted online that was seen by like 50,000 people, and I like a bunch of likes and reshares, and I was like, I can write this article and I can help people and literally,
I don't need their approval.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, like, there's gonna be 2 people that read this paper that spent 2 years on. I was like, I'm done. And so,
what's the purpose of writing the paper?
Like, I'm done. And I wasn't into it, and so I quit. And I just started working with the Barbell Shrugged guys as a coach in their training programs. We'll coach online. That's how I got into like the online space early before a lot of it blew up, right? And then. Coaching weightlifting, nutrition. And again, it's like I didn't have a background in a lot of stuff, but I was learning as you were going. I was learning as I was going, getting experience and learning really from Mike and Doug, like how they coach people and you know, all through the podcast, like learning from these. They would have experts like, you know,
right and left.
Yeah, right and left. Yeah. Like, you know, people that are on the show that have been doing this stuff for 20 plus years, right? Like,
so you're basically in school.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, that's the early part of the journey. I don't know if you.
No. That's great. I mean, because that kind of brings us to now, and I think there's a couple of notable pieces there. And first off, the CrossFit piece. And whether you're a fan of CrossFit or not, right? You know, as a coach, as an athlete, or as a fitness enthusiast, to note how powerful CrossFit has been for so many people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about getting fit for you. What you realized through the power of getting involved with CrossFit is how it literally changed your life.
Yeah.
It changed your perspective on things. It taught you how to do things. You go back, and we can maybe carve into this piece a little bit later, the whole paleo thing. Look, at the time, the thing that worked, the thing about paleo that I think is why it caught fire for me, is that it just made good logical sense.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, like when you eat that way, or if you haven't been eating that way, let's just say you've been eating any other way, when you start
like how I was eating like Mountain Dew and pizza.
Yeah, like Mountain Dew pizza and beer in the bar or whatever, drinks in the bar. You start eating that way, you start feeling a lot better.
Right.
It's good. And you should. It makes good logical sense. And then there's the community aspect that comes around that. So that was cool. Like you're like, hey, other people are feeling better, they're performing better, they're living better, and because they've adopted this lifestyle. And you know, the last part of it is again, if you hadn't been eating like that and you're training through like modalities like you would in CrossFit, fuck, your body comp starts to change. You start to feel better. You start to look differently and quote unquote better, right? You're looking fit. So there's a lot of things to that. And again, it's a life changer because it teaches you things about yourself and what's important and what isn't important. You become more productive. You start, you're focused in a different way on different things, and you're taking in these opportunities that were placed in front of you that, again, because somebody invited you to do a workout that and punished you and you got up the next day and went, I feel like ass, but that's a wake up call, and I'm going to go back to doing it. Which again brings you to the last part of what you just said there. That's the early part of the journey. You know, so the other thing you touched on was you were a biomedical engineering. Yeah. So there's got to be some stuff in there that's making sense to you along the way from the biology perspective. Sure. I mean, there's organic chemistry, there's, all kinds of stuff that's going on there that relates to so before we get into the rest of the journey, how much of that have you brought in terms of the technical education that you got, have you brought into your business now? Well,
I mean, obviously the, understanding a lot of that stuff, like the terminologies and language and physiology, like I wasn't a stranger to these things. Mm-hmm. So, making the shift from learning about it from from an engineering standpoint, like where we're talking mostly about healthcare, to actually talking about things like nutrition. That was the literacy was there. Yeah. The literacy helped. And I think what has most helped me in terms of my coaching is, and this is where I think a lot of people do struggle with, even just from an individual standpoint, or even coaches, is how to interpret data, like how to look at data, how to take data, how to look at data objectively, how to get conclusions and make hypotheses from things like that. Like I think that's where people say like, oh, do you use your engineering? I gotta do, because I have to think critically about certain situations. Like when I have a client, it's like, okay, well, this is the data that I'm seeing, and these are the things that I'm noticing. Like, what conclusions can I draw? What hypotheses can we sit there and make? And then can we run? Because nutrition and fitness, kind of a lot of it is just an experiment. Yeah. So, yeah.
I was so hoping you were going to go there with that. Like, I mean, in terms of queuing that up, the critical thinking aspect and the connecting the dots. So you're sitting around this table in this podcast room or whatever environment you're in, and you're hearing these experts sitting across from you. And while you might not understand all of it, you do understand how to walk away from that and connect the dots and then apply it in a way that makes sense. And, we're talking about the data and kind of getting into that. So before you even get into the data aspects, because data is a huge part of coaching, and I'm hoping to kind of, identify a few of the things that you really look at there that you feel are important or not important for that matter. But maybe kind of just from the nutrition perspective, how did you go from coaching the weightlifting, right? And getting involved with the weightlifting programming and whatnot. Yeah. When did the nutrition piece, you talked about paleo, but when did the nutrition piece really come in for you?
That's a great question. So, I mean, I competed in weightlifting from 2011 to 2017 or so. Mm-hmm. So, 6 years or so. But the biggest thing, the reason why the nutrition piece came into play was because, I mean, obviously weightlifting is Olympic weightlifting is a weight class sport. Right. And it was always a struggle to figure out how to stay within weight, but then also perform at a level where, you can get stronger, you can recover from training. That was always a struggle for me, because I just didn't have my nutrition where it needed to be.
What were you doing with your nutrition?
I mean, basically at that point, it was just like, hey, let's eat paleo, right? Let's eat paleo. Let's focus on quality, which is not bad. Nope. It's not bad. But like, that is the thing what worked when I was first starting. Mm-hmm. It wasn't going to work after the fact that I had already been, doing this for a while, and my focus had changed from more so from a health perspective or just getting healthier to athletic performance. Yeah.
Right.
So there was always a struggle between like, all right, how can I maximize performance, but then stay at my weight? And it was kind of a fluctuation always between like, oh, I would cut down and it wouldn't perform well because, of course, how did I cut? Yeah, how did I cut? Just eat less food. Eat less food, no carbs, like go low carb.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like, and of course, like that always backfired. So it wasn't until like I started like, okay, well, there's something else in here missing. So started to learn more about the nutrition aspect and how to properly fuel for training. And then also too, like how to manage your body weight, right? And so that's really where I started to get more into understanding like, okay, and then also seeing how nutrition just doesn't affect like performance. Nutrition literally is like the foundation of practically everything we do. It does not just affect like your abilities in the gym. It affects your abilities elsewhere in your work, in your life. Like everything is affected.
Elaborate on that, man. Talk about that more and kind of what you were discovering or what you really mean by that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's like it can affect your sleep. It can affect your digestion. It can affect your performance, your mental clarity, everything. Nutrition is literally the basis of health. And that's something I learned like during that process. It's like, oh yeah, I can perform better, I can recover better, but these are all these other areas, other aspects of my life that are better because I am able to fuel myself properly. And I have really, really good, consistent, keyword, consistent nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah. So the demands have changed. Right. So and what you were doing before isn't working.
Right.
And whether you're an athlete or not, I think this is, a really good point for people to be aware of is just because you ate like this at a certain point in your life and you got a certain result, you're in college, you eat this way, you run a couple of times a week or whatever. And you have the body that you think you're going to keep forever or whatever. And then 10 years later or 5 years later, now you're a professional, or, you're a new parent, or you're both. Yeah. And, you're not as active as you were. You're everything's different. Plus your diet history and what you were doing before is definitely impacting where you're at now, but the demands are different.
Right.
And you think that going back to the same exercise or diet program that you were on 5 years ago is going to get you back to where you were. Yeah. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. And if you don't understand the concepts and basics and things like that, like if you don't, and especially habits, like if you don't have these habits, then it's very hard to adjust and shift. Yeah.
So you've got this, you're coming through the competition ranks and you're starting to learn some things that, all right, so paleo may not be working for me. What are the major adjustments that you're making in order to perform and look better and feel better and all those things?
And I started to pay attention to how much I was eating. And one of the things that I learned, and I wasn't eating consistently enough food. And that's very common. I see that like even just now. And I know like, here's the thing about like, because you'll see in the health and fitness industry or just diet industry, it's like people eat too much. And while that may have value and merit and truth, but the fact is that with people who are doing the stuff that we're doing, like training hard and athletes and things like that, like I often find, they may be eating a lot of foods at certain periods of time, but it's not consistent. And I tell this to my clients all the time. It's like the body can live when things are inconsistent, but it thrives when things are consistent. And so learning and practicing more consistent and sustainable nutrition, that's the other thing too. It's like that's where I started to also learn. It's like we can do a lot of things, but is it going to be something that we can sustain and be doing for a long period of time? Right. Because changes don't happen overnight. Like nothing happens overnight with the body. So you have to be able to sustain this and do this for a long period of time. And then also too, when you do that, you've developed these habits and lifestyle changes, and this just becomes what you do. And of course, the result of your daily actions is ultimately what leads to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, your consistency leads to habits, and your habits lead to consistency.
Right.
So it's really about, it's the chicken or the egg, but really it's really consistency that forms the habit.
Yeah.
Don't talk about habits yet. Let's find consistency, and then we can talk about the habits that help you with the consistency. So you just touched on something there, which is, I think leads more to, the philosophy aspect of, kind of how you handle nutrition.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned a key word there being, healthy and sustainable. And that being, the premise for how you you're coaching a client, or what you might be having them do, or the suggestions that you might be giving or telling them what to do. And so we'll talk about that, telling versus coaching. But, I hear a lot, and I hear that the term healthy and sustainable. It's a little buzzword, right? It sounds good, and I think most people can get on board with, that's what I need. I need something that's healthy and sustainable. And it can almost be elementary in a sense, but I want to talk about that and what you really mean by, what is sustainable for a client. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because no two people are the same. No diet is going to be the same. You just mentioned exercise and diet. The human body is really an experiment.
Right.
So how do you really define sustainability?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I think about sustainability for somebody is, does it align with ultimately how they want to live? Does it align with their values and priorities? I think that's really something that I've learned in recent years, like what sustainability truly is. Because if we're doing something that is not in alignment with what is going to make us happy long term, or what we value, or what's important to us, it's not going to work. Like a lot of diets say operate, right? Like operate, well, you can't eat this, you have to take away this, or you have to do this a certain way, or whatever, right? But what if you're like, man, you know what? I have a kid, they like to eat, they like to have pizza night sometimes. Like, I can't do that. Like, this is important to me, but I'm not able to do it because I'm being told that I can't do it. It's not sustainable.
Right.
That's not sustainable.
Because it doesn't align.
It doesn't align. It doesn't align with what's important to them. Or like maybe they're in a relationship and they're married, and it's really important for them to go with their spouse to have a date night and enjoy whatever. And maybe their spouse comes from like an eating disorder background, and it's like
you're there to support them.
Yeah, you're there to support them, and you sitting there on your phone trying to like track every single macros at the dinner table, and your partner's like, what the hell are you doing?
Not helpful.
It's not going to be helpful, and that's not sustainable. And so that's what I think sustainability is, in terms of it's got to align with what your values and priorities are. And one thing I don't think a lot of people actually take the time or thought to get clarity
I guarantee they
on
don't.
What exactly they want and what exactly is important to them and what they value. And that's something that I really try to, while I'm working with people, is really try to bring that out. It's like, what's actually important to you? What do you value? How do you want to live? And I'm constantly trying to bring that to attention, because if we don't have clarity on that, there's no way we know this experiment, what's actually going to work long-term or not.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. I mean, the parallel there of values and sustainability, or values and long-term dietary success. Right. I think there's probably a very, very small population or percentage of people that actually take that into account. Mm-hmm. There's also a flip side of that, right? I think too, that I think the flip side of that is that it's all based on values, and I can't do something because it goes against the value. Let me be specific. I think when we start to look at diet types and things that people have subscribed to, whether it's paleo or veganism or so forth, they've got themselves so locked up in, well, I can't do this because it goes against my values.
Sure.
They think they're their values. They maybe haven't examined those the way, you're sort of describing there. and in a sense can lead them down an unhealthy path.
Yeah.
I mean, and to where they're completely closed-minded to making changes that, quite frankly, they should probably be making in order to be more healthy. I don't know. Have you had that experience?
I mean, sure. Like, I mean, the great question to ask is just like, how is it working out? Right? Like, is it working out for you? Is it working out for you? Because, you know, again, for instance, my stepdad, he's been doing keto like before it was cool, and like, like he's been doing keto for a long time, and he loves it, and that it works for him. He likes it. He likes how he feels on it. He's able to do it. He's able to execute it. It's not a problem for him. And even if he, you know, sometimes he eats some carbs or whatever, but it's not a big deal. He's like, well, it's fine. I'll just get back to my normal doing. He likes that. It's become his lifestyle at this point, and he believes in it. He prescribes to it. Me and him sometimes butt heads a lot because we'll be talking, and he'll be talking about low carb and all this stuff, and I'm like, but it works for him, and so for all intents and purposes, that is sustainable for him. And if it became to a point where it's like, oh, you know, maybe you should, because he runs track.
Okay.
So he's my stepdad's a beast, man. He's like he's close to being 70. Yeah, he's close to being 70. And he runs like 400, 800, 100, 200, like God state champion, like winning all these gold medals. And of course, like, you know, what would everybody say? Keto is not great for what you're doing, right? Of course, right? Or well, rather that's what it has. That's
it's counterintuitive.
Well, yeah, but he kills it, and people are like, well, you probably could do better. He's like,
but he's happy.
I'm happy. And that's also, I think, a thing about sustainability is like, are you happy? If you're happy and you like where you're at and you feel good, that's going to be sustainable.
So what happens when the lines cross where you as a coach recognize their values are that they want to be happy, but they're really not happy, and it has everything to do with regard to with the absolutes that the decisions they've made, right? The consequence of not adopting or adapting to this new eating style because there's a new demand. What are the consequences there?
I mean, we as coaches, we can't make anybody do anything. I try to say, like, the analogy I use is with all my clients before I start working with them is like, look, I can't make you do anything. We're in a car, we're driving to California, right? Like, I've got a roadmap, and I think I know the best way to get here, but you're driving the car. So if you want to take a detour, then that's what you're choosing, right? And I can't ultimately choose for you.
Right.
And I think a lot of coaches struggle with that because, well, one, even clients themselves will come to a coach and be like, I just need you to tell me what to do.
Yep.
But it doesn't work like that, actually. I mean, we can give you the tools and the guidance and the knowledge, but if you're not going to if you're refusing to do it, then there's nothing.
Leaves you in a tough spot as a coach.
And and at that point, you're choosing. You as a client, you're choosing that, and so you have to accept. And it's like, tell people this all the time. It's like you're choosing, so you get to accept this.
That's the consequence.
That's it.
That is the result.
You get to take ownership of this.
Right, this is you.
This is you.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, okay, well, I get it. Or it's like, yeah, I'm choosing it. And that's actually the thing that I thought that I wanted is actually not what I wanted.
But now I know.
Yeah. And that's happened. That's happened a lot.
But in order for them to know that, they have to go through that. Right?
Yeah.
You have to go through and come out the other side.
Like, I've had clients come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to lose 30 pounds and I want to do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is the work that is required to do it. And we're going to do, and they get into it and it's like, you know what? That's actually not really what I wanted. Yeah.
Whether it's because they've realized that or they were really disillusioned about the process and they recognize that's not sustainable for them because it's not going to make them happy. So they have to figure out another goal.
Exactly.
To adjust that goal. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. That's part of the process. Right. That's part of it.
And so as a coach, you've got to recognize what that, right? Like, okay, this person's getting it, you know, like, and so I need to check in with them and we may need to do another check-in or another assessment and have a real talk about, so, hey, I know you've been struggling here and I'm just going to ask, is this still what you want? Because it's okay if you don't, but we got to talk about this.
I asked that question so many times, like, especially when you notice that, there's a reason why people are not compliant to something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for a lot of coaches, I think, and I even struggle sometimes, like, why aren't they doing this? There's a reason why people aren't compliant. And if you ask enough questions and you really figure out and dig, you will see that most of the reason is just, again, it's not in alignment with what they really truly want or what they're ready and willing, able to do, and their values and priorities. That's it.
So the next question is if you start to sense that somebody's going down this path of being resistant and non-compliant as a coach, and you said you could ask the questions, what can you do as a coach to set yourself up ahead of time, maybe to anticipate it a little bit, be able to have that conversation? And I guess the question I'm really asking is, what's the most important thing you know about your client going into a coach-client relationship? Like, you're going to go through a process of assessing somebody and kind of understanding what their goals and their needs are, what their history is, and so forth. But there's questions in there that could prep you for I hear what this person is asking. I know what their goals are going to be, right? Or what their goals are. They've been very clear or articulate about those, but I can tell already this is going to be a problem. Or the question you could ask to test the temperature of whether or not this is going to be a problem or not. What are those, if there are any?
I mean, I don't know if there's exact questions, but more so it's just digging deeper into why somebody wants to do something. Again, there's surface level goals, right? A lot of these goals are, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, why? Right. Or, I want to be able to snatch 200 pounds or whatever. Well, why? And I think that a lot of people, maybe even newer coaches or less experienced coaches, and even I've experienced, I've worked with other coaches and I'll tell them my goals, but then they'll be like, okay, cool. This is how you do it. Right. And then wonder why, why you're not compliant. Right. Because again, one thing I think is that the person who's asking for it has not even asked themselves why they want it. And so it is way harder. You do anything, right? And you're just I don't know why I'm doing this. Right. What's the actual real important? And when shit gets hard, because things
it's gonna get hard,
ultimately get hard, and you will ultimately hit points where you're not making progress, you stall, and guess what happens? People quit.
Right, because they don't have the bandwidth to deal with the hard.
But really, it's also they just don't know why they're doing it. They don't know what the importance is, what the real reason they're doing.
Why am I eating this way?
Exactly.
Why is this workout program programmed this way?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's something, off at the front end, really getting clarity. They need the clarity and you need the clarity, because that's also a good way to figure out what is actually important to them. Right. Because they could say well, I want to lose 30 pounds. And ultimately we find out after asking enough questions, well, they really just want to feel confident, better about themselves. They are worried that, maybe they have a family history and they have a young kid and they want to see that kid grow up, and that really scares the shit out of them. And these are the things that are going to be things that they need and you need to know to start to align their actions appropriately.
Yeah. So the digging deep on the why, and understanding there's always something there, because if it comes up, it probably shouldn't surprise you as a coach. If you can avoid the surprises, then you can help a client be ultimately more successful. And so it's really about building connection.
It is about building. I mean, that is what coaching is. It's connection, relationship.
It sounds so cliche, but in the end, it is exactly what it is. And the connection comes from building trust, and building trust comes from a lot of things, showing up, being there, understanding who you're dealing with, asking the right questions, right?
Listening,
listening, and it's not telling. So then it's not telling, it's coaching. Let's talk about sort of the telling versus coaching, right? So nutrition coaching has evolved, a lot, and it continues to evolve. I mean, as an industry, a lot of things have changed. It's very popular to be a nutrition coach now. And it's very easy, I'm going to be honest, to get a nutrition coaching certification, air quotes.
You don't even really need one.
You don't even need one, right? Yeah. You can instantly become an expert, through, on social media or whatever, or just by saying it or showing up on a podcast and having a really good chat. And all of a sudden you're an authority or whatnot. So, just going back to the telling versus coaching, let's talk about like systems, right? And templates versus actually coaching and kind of your stand on that, because where you started with, it was shrugged.
Yeah.
With the workout programs, if I can remember right, a lot of templating there.
Yeah. It was group programming. It was group training. Yeah. Right. Group training.
So you're putting together this, hey, we know within a reasonable, with a reasonable degree of confidence, when people follow this program, they get this result,
right,
at the end, but it's not taking into account, the individual and the individual nuance. Like you have no idea, can this person even, you mentioned earlier, can they even properly squat?
Right.
I mean, that's always the exercise that gets brought up. I don't know why, but, but before we start doing Olympic lifting, let's make sure we can, get into the squat properly. At least I know, and we're working down that path. Talk about that with regard to nutrition and templates versus, again, the actual coaching aspect. Because you see a lot of coaches out there, air quotes, that are providing these templates. Right. You want to be a bikini competitor? Here's the template, right? We just figure out your macros. I give it to you. We adjust macros and we go.
Right.
And that might be very appropriate for that bikini competitor. I don't know. But you got the Olympic weightlifter. There's a template for this. You want to lift this much weight at this particular time. You have to weigh in and weigh this much. Then here's the template. I tweak it a little bit. We go. How do you handle that with all the different clients that you have in terms of building a program and actually coaching them? Does it start with a template? More specifically, where does it start?
Sure. I mean, I do one-on-one and I work individually with people. So I don't use any kind of like templates or anything like that. I mean, templates and things like that can work, and they have worked for a lot of people. Like, I mean, one of the most popular nutrition companies, RP Strength, that's like basically
that's what they do.
Yeah,
they've been hugely successful.
Hugely successful.
And people have had great results.
Great results, 100%, right? And the thing about a template or just rather than one-on-one type coaching is that the execution is not the issue. They can execute. They have no problem executing. A lot of times for people, that's just all they needed.
Yeah, they just want, tell me what to do, coach.
Tell me what to do. Give me the roadmap. I can get there by myself, right? But for a lot of people, that doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because it's not a knowledge, or it's not I don't know what to do. It's just I don't know how to do it. And it's an execution issue. And so the coach, really what I think coaching is, there's knowledge and there's education aspects of that, and there's support and there's accountability, but it's more so like, here's how you can implement it in your unique life. Because again, it's like if you have somebody who's like, a busy mom, she's maybe single mom, she's got 3 kids and she works, like maybe she works a night shift, like in the hospital, like how is she gonna execute this template that's just like written for, hey, you need to eat 6 meals a day and this is the times that you need to do it? Like, she can't even really.
It's not practical.
Yeah, it's not practical. So, and there's no tweaking because there's no adjustment. Right.
It's a template.
Yeah. So the template basically assumes that you can just follow it perfectly, or you have enough knowledge to tweak it yourself, or enough experience and understanding to tweak it yourself, which a lot of people don't.
Yeah, so you're choosing a template regardless of your values, regardless of
there is no values
nuance
for it, really. I mean, maybe, but it's just do this, and if you follow it, you'll get what you are trying to get.
Yeah. So to be clear, I mean, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's a time and place for these.
Sure.
And they can be
effective.
Yeah, and they can be effective, but it's not for everybody. And so what they're looking for is, and likely they've tried templates before.
Right.
They've tried this before and they recognize at some level, but still they'll come to the coach and go, just tell me what to do.
Right.
But they still not recognizing that that's not it.
That's not it. Right. So, I mean, again, it's like you have to understand a lot about a person. And there's, for me at least, I spend an hour and a half trying to learn as much as I possibly can about this person and, what they've done before, what they're doing now in terms of their, not just how they eat, but everything about their life. Like, what's their life like?
Right.
Again, like, you have to understand this, and you have to have a good grasp of because that's going to help you also figure out, like, what kind of limitations, what can we expect? I think a lot of people go into things like they don't understand, like they don't lay out expectations. Like, hey, like if you're this person that we just talked about, this busy mom, like who, whatever, it's like these goals that you want, they may not line up with your actual life. And we have to come to Jesus about this.
Yeah,
right?
Like, shit's got to get real.
Yeah, like we got to get real about this. But again, it's like just doing something that's written out is not going to really tell you that you're going to do this. And you're like, I don't understand why this didn't work. This didn't work for me. Well, there's a lot of reasons why it didn't.
Right. And you have to know your client to understand how to tell them that.
And I'm not saying that it can't work for you at some point, but there is a different path that we're going to have to take, and we're going to have to figure that out. And then that's going to be a very unique path for you.
Right. And there are some people that like to be that problem solver for themselves, and they will go and they will they'll do some research. They'll seek out some on the side coaching or whatever, and they can grab and kind of decipher and connect the dots for themselves through and with a template.
Right.
And again, not to beat this topic up too much, but again, I think it's a great place for a lot of people to start sometimes if they're not really sure. Hey,
I did a template.
Yeah, this is what I was coming back to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've done paleo diet as a template.
Perfect example.
Like
the WOD, right? At CrossFit, it's a template. Like it's what everybody's doing. This is what we're going to do. And there's value in it, right? To a certain extent.
Exposure, right?
Exactly.
Exposure to it.
Experience. Now I have an experience that I can relate to. And so when I recognize that it's not working, that's the point where you need to start going, okay, well, why isn't it working? And you've just articulated.
Well, things just become more complex. Like, again, it's like, like doing a template or just following a diet, right? Yeah. Like, because you got to think about where you're starting from. If you're starting from this place where, like me, for example, like, Mountain Dew pizza diet and beer, right? And I start doing this very simple, hey, just do this.
Right.
Of course, like, I was like 35 pounds or whatever, like just doing that. But then things got more complicated. Mm-hmm. My life got more complicated, or my goals got more complicated. Yeah. Right. And so again, like it'll get you to start, but you may need to learn. And I think that's also too, the other thing is that like, that's the main value of having a coach, a mentor, right? You learn from somebody else's experience. You get an outside view of things. Like, again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, is that the things that I learned from Doug and Mike are still things that I'm applying like in my own training, my own business, things that I've learned from them.
But it's not everything they did.
No.
Right. That's the point.
But that's the thing about coaching is like, that's the value that you get from that. I think one of the biggest values is that you learn from somebody else's experiences. Yeah.
And, the good coaches will share those with you and do it in a way that makes sense in your particular situation, as a means for you to reflect and relate and make those decisions on your own, which are your decisions to make, that you need to own. And it's all a learning.
Yeah.
Build on.
And then you develop some self-sufficiency, right? Like, which is the ultimate thing, I think, is where we should, as trainers or coaches, like, I mean, yes, like, we need clients, right? Or, but ultimately, like, we should be able to get to somebody to the point where it's like they are fine on their own, like that's what I believe. At least.
That goes back to sort of the philosophy piece on the coaching end of things is, what's the end goal for a client? Obviously they have a lot of clients come to us with very specific goals. They want a very specific result, but what's the end goal for a client for you? And I think what you just said there was, I want them to be able to do this on their own. I want to be able to help them find the thing that's sustainable for them so they can make those decisions, not necessarily feel good about every decision they make, but understand how to be aware of what they've done and how to make adjustments along the way.
I think that's the biggest thing too, is like, one thing too about sustainability is like, what's sustainable now may not be sustainable later, but what the thing is that with experience and with knowledge and with, everything, be able to look at the big picture and how all the pieces connect
Zoom
together.
it out.
Then it's a lot easier to say like, oh, okay, well, this has changed, but I can adapt to this.
But what should I adjust?
Exactly. And so like giving somebody that tool, that critical thinking, they can coach literally. Yeah. I mean, I know they say like if you coach yourself, but like for me with nutrition, I don't have a nutrition coach. I mean, I've had nutrition coaches in the past, but I've got to the point where it's like I understand my body, I understand what it needs. I can listen
through the process.
Yeah, I have all these tools, skills, and I can just use them, and I know how to use them. It's like jiu-jitsu, like like you have all these techniques.
It's you just pile
whatever happens, like whatever somebody gives you this, and then you just know, all right, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? Like that's I think where the ultimate way where we gotta like at least my goal is to help somebody get to, and I may not be able to get them there just with me, and because I mean I've been doing this stuff for over a decade, and I'm still learning things. Yeah. So yeah.
And that's the beautiful part of the process, though, is you're always learning because it's always changing. Which brings me to kind of the next topic, which is, why we're in the situation, or let's just say, why is nutrition coaching so popular right now? And so I think we got to take a step back and go, and talk a little bit about sort of the state of America's health as it relates to nutrition. Yeah. And why we're in the situation we're in right now. I mean, we're sicker, fatter, and more unhealthy than we've ever been. Yet we have access to, all this information. Yeah. All these coaches, all this, all these modern tools and medical procedures and drugs and all this stuff. Yet it just seems to continue to get worse for us. So, I mean, in your perspective, how did we get here, man? How did we get to this place?
I mean, I think the thing is that what you just said, though, is part of the problem. It's overwhelming. Like fitness and health, we've been in it. So we're like, oh yeah, but if I think about if I put myself in my shoes like 15 years ago, like, and I'm, especially with like, we didn't have social media, Facebook, Instagram. Right. We didn't the internet we didn't have
media
YouTube.
Was way different. It was different. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of information, but it's very hard to know like what's good information, what's not good information, what's applicable to me, like what. Again, so like it's overwhelming and that's the biggest thing. And I hear from a lot of people that come to me, it's like, I don't know what to do, because literally I can go, the clients will be like, I can go and hear one thing from one person and then literally go hear the exact opposite from another person. Or all this stuff sounds just really way too complicated for me. I can't even wrap my head around it. I don't even understand what these things mean. It's
intimidating.
Yeah, it's very intimidating. It's like stepping in a CrossFit gym the first time. You hear like AMRAP. I don't know what that is.
Right. But it sounds scary.
Yeah, like it's all scary. So again, I think that's one of the issues. And for me, like that's what I'm trying to do too, is just like simplify things and make it to where it's like it's not super, super scary and complicated. And yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned a couple reasons why it's so tough, but sort of talk about the future and how we maybe kind of fix the issue. And I think you just made a really good point there. And it's like, let's stop complicating this stuff. Right. Because it doesn't need to be that way. Right. And then there's the whole concept of how the information is getting out. And there's two kind of things to look at there. There's the things that are creating problems. Right. Misinformation. Right. Like, and it's maybe somebody has the best intention of the world and they have some really good information to provide, but it's missing context. Right. So in a sense, it's misinformation. And then there's the disinformation. There's this concept of this person is just straight up putting out bullshit for the sake of making a buck. Yeah. Right. Or supporting the person that puts, in a sense, still making a buck. It's very biased and it's dirty. Yeah. Right. It's kind of a filthy way of getting that information out there. So our clients, America is stuck in this trap of what to believe, what not to believe. And so they're reaching and they go to, they don't have any problem getting food.
Right.
Like we're in a place where there's the abundance is here. Like in the U.S., I mean, you can walk into a grocery store and get anything and everything, and they're very confused about well, how many ingredients are supposed to be on this package if I'm going to buy this food versus not. So there's all these things. So when you get a person that comes to you, right, that is very confused about this, this whole situation, where do you start with them to help uncomplicate the process? Because again, they're at this point, and particularly for coaches, we have to be very aware of what our current clients and future clients are hearing, right, and seeing and reading. So you got to stay out in front of the game. You can almost make some assumptions that they're going to come to the table with a certain amount of knowledge about certain things. Or maybe it's accurate, maybe it's inaccurate. But again, staying in front. What are the things that you can do for a client right off the bat to uncomplicate the process for them? Let's just take a few steps back so that we're not afraid of this. What do you do? What tools do you give them? What instruction do you give them? How does it work?
Yeah. I mean, I think with that, again, it just depends on the individual person. But I mean, taking things like one small step, focusing on small changes, but also one thing I think is important is opening up lines of communication. So asking questions, like people have heard so many things about, nutrition, and like, I think what's important is to encourage people to like, hey, like ask me these things, like ask me what like if you hear some myth or whatever, or rather you hear some claim, right? Let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. And that way you start to educate. And the education is important. I think though that sometimes, again, it's like, it still can get very
cloudy.
Yeah. I mean, because, again, if we look at popular things out there like diets and stuff like that, like there's a lot of dogma, right? Like this is true, this is not true, or all that kind of stuff. But I think that's also too important for us to have those conversations with our clients, and then also be informed and be educated, and not really. Precision nutrition makes it really. They say a great thing. Be agnostic, like dietarily agnostic, right? Because again, it's like they may come to you asking a question about this particular diet or whatever, and they may be curious about it, and it may work for them, and we shouldn't be like, no, that's wrong. You're wrong.
Right.
Like that's not going to build a good relationship with this person.
That's first and foremost.
Like you're dismissing them right off the bat, right? Like, so, and you're not listening. So I mean, acknowledging that, okay, well, what do you think about, I think start asking
It's an open
questions.
dialogue.
Yes, have an open dialogue. And I think that's really an important thing to have, like with people, if they come to you with like questions about certain things, about fads or information that they see, is have an open dialogue. Don't be closed off.
Any thoughts on how we get, our society to have an open dialogue about health instead of what we're doing right now?
I don't know, man. Like, honestly, like, I mean, not to get into all the stuff with the current situation, but that's like literally I feel like that's literally our problem.
That's our problem.
Yeah. Like, I mean, everybody has a lot of bias and is not willing to have a discussion about things or look at the other side or understand what somebody is coming from. It's just like, I'm right, you're wrong. Fuck you. Like,
right. Well, that's literally where it goes to.
It's literally.
And especially if you don't agree. Like if I don't agree or if I don't see your dogmatic view or whatever, it goes immediately to dismissal.
Yeah.
There is no digging down to wanting to understand why the problem exists.
Right.
And we just keep throwing things at it. And so the next question, sorry with that.
Yeah.
So as we're getting it, so we're digging a little bit deeper, but what role in your mind does or should the government have in providing health advice, nutrition advice to our citizens?
Man, I don't even know, because like, honestly, like I'm not the biggest. I try to stay within my like little realm.
Got you. Same with me.
Yeah. And then again, there's people that be like, well, the government's not really looking out for people. I think it's our personal responsibility.
There you go.
Like, just to make sure that we are doing the things that are going, and again, like, it's hard to know what is correct.
Agreed 100%.
And this is, I think, why people like coaches and fitness is important, because again, you have people who know these things and hopefully are staying abreast of like information and knowledge and using evidence and not just making shit up, like to help people get to a place where they can be healthy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, I see where you're going and where you don't want to go there. And I can appreciate that situation. I think it's what role and should there be, and it goes back to what you just said, and I agree with you 1,000%. It's 100% your responsibility as an individual to make those decisions for yourself. The next question is like, well, where should they be going for those decisions? Mm-hmm. Or sorry, not for the decision, but for the information to help them make a better decision about their health and whatnot, which then brings back in sort of the coaching industry as a whole and kind of what we're doing. Give me your take right now on kind of where we're at as a nutrition coaching. You could probably lump in fitness industry right now. Mm-hmm. Are we doing a good job? I mean, are we doing a good job as a whole collectively in becoming part of the solution to the problem we just identified? Or are we just exacerbating or making it worse?
It's tough, man. Cause like some days I'll be like, yeah, like things are happening. People are changing like their viewpoints and stuff like that. It's getting more, and then I'll go on social media and I'll see all this
your faith in humanity
the
is
wild west.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
destroyed.
it's just, yeah. So, it's tough because again, nutrition is not very, I try to simplify things, but it's a very complicated thing.
It's nuanced. Yeah.
It's a very complicated thing. And you also have a lot of other, not just, there's values and priorities in it. Like, I mean, prime example, if we look at plant-based eating, right? Like there's a lot of ethics for people who choose to not eat meat. And that can be a very passionate, for a lot of people, a very passionate, belief, like that they cling to. Right. And so that's very hard to get. And people are going to speak very passionately about it.
On both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. And so, I mean, I don't know exactly the total state of where things are going. It almost seems like, there's right now, it's what's interesting. The thing I'm most curious and interested about is there seems to be a dichotomy between diet, anti-diet.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And like, so if you're a consumer in there just wants to be healthier, that's a fucking tough place to be in the middle of that.
And my thing is like, why do we have to have sides all the time? Like, where can we find the common ground? Like, agree again, like anti-diet, I get why there's things that are relevant there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why diet culture, right, as has been said, is like toxic and bad. I get some of those things, right? I can understand why you think that way, but also it doesn't make it bad if somebody does want to diet and they want to lose weight to be healthy. Because now a person, like you said, is stuck in the middle. It's like, well, should I diet? Should I not diet? Like I'm 350 pounds. Like, what do I need to do?
Right.
Like like, yeah. So like, where's the middle ground? And that's really what I think, again, it's just human nature for us to just separate into like sides. And until we can figure out like, again, critical thinking and just zooming out and not holding on and attaching to things, like where we can start to see like, hey, there's some of this here and there's some of this here. Let's find the middle ground in the middle area.
Yeah. Can we take a deep breath and create some space here for some dialogue and some thinking?
Or can we just come together and figure out like, how can we actually serve these people the way that they need to be served, or that they need help with,
Yeah. So you talked about your philosophy a bit. You talked about sustainability, and we talked a little bit of, you kind of alluded or said very specifically, actually, you spend right at the get go, you spend about 90 minutes when you're onboarding a client. I want to talk about your process a little bit. Sure. And so for somebody that is caught in the middle, right, of that dichotomy and trying to make some decisions and really they want to take 100% responsibility for their health, and they maybe been down the road a time or two and they don't know where to start, and they just need some help.
Yeah.
They don't know. This whole values aligning with nutrition thing is not there right now. They just know they're struggling. The process that you take them through, I think, is really important. And I think, there's a lot of coaches out there be very curious to understand how you do that, because you said, I'm coaching one-on-one. I don't do templates. You know, I coach people based on their very specific needs, their very specific lives, the challenges that they have. And that's much, much different than having 200 clients on your roster and adjusting macros on a weekly basis and sending those things out. So you start with this very in-depth or very, 90 minutes is a long time, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a valuable guy. Your time is valuable, and that's what you're doing. You're trading time, time for dollars. Mm-hmm. So in this hour and a half, what should a client expect, or a potential client expect to get from you? What goes on in that hour and a half?
I mean, the biggest thing is understanding their goals, right? And for them to understand their goals and be very specific, again, about what they want, and then understand why about what it is that they want. Again, I think that that's a big, we have a surface level desire, and we have, these goals that we think that we want, but we don't really understand why we want them. Maybe we've just heard or been told, like, by somebody, like maybe a doctor, like, hey, you need to lose weight, whatever. But they don't really understand why, and they don't understand what all is going into it, what all is required to see these things. And so again, it's like these discussions that we have about expectations, what we have about, I think that's another big thing we didn't talk about, but it's like expectations, super, super important to
from client to coach, coach to client,
from both ways, right? Like, what do they expect from working with a coach? What do they expect? What do they want? And then what the coach expects from them. I think a lot of heartbreak and a lot of the head beating on the wall can be avoided by just establishing very clear expectations of how things are going to work.
Right. From the client coach communication process to the feedback process to this is when our appointments are. I mean, those are all very obvious things. But what about other things, like in terms of expectations? I would refer to maybe them as like non-negotiables. Yeah,
non-negotiables, things that they're not willing to change, like if they, like, for example, if they were like, oh no, I'm not going to stop, we're going to have our date night or whatever, me and my spouse. And like, that's one way to figure out like what's important to them, right? Like, because if that is clearly important enough for them to be like, I'm not changing it, then we need to figure out how to make this work.
How to work through it.
Or we need to say, okay, well, like for example, if they're, I mean, obviously it depends on their goals, but like, let's just say they're trying to get on a bodybuilding stage show, right? And be freaking 10% body fat, right? Or whatever. You want to go out with your wife and have pizza and beer. It's probably not going to
happen.
Yeah. So let's get this expectation out of the way first. And it's like, hey, if you're going to continue to do this, we got to adjust your goals.
Or you're going to step on stage fat.
Yeah.
And fat relative to the people that are around you that didn't go out and have beers and pizza to get there.
And what's more important to you? That's another couple of questions that I like to ask is like, what's the importance of these things relative to whatever else is going on in your life? Because I think that's an important thing to ask somebody and really get to a feel for how much they're going to really put into it. Because I've definitely worked with people that, they come at you like, I want to.
Oh, they're a 10.
Yeah,
they're a 10 out of 10 in terms of the commitment scale when they come to the door.
Well, and I, again, it's like I didn't ask them this question, and then now I've learned from that experience. It's like, well, how important is this? Like you just said, you have all these things going on in your life. What's the actual importance of this? And then also, what's your commitment? Right? Not saying like your commitment to me, but like your own personal commitment. And what I mean by that is like, like this stuff's going to get hard at some point, right? And you're going to want to quit.
Right.
And you have to be willing to keep doing something and working, even though it's going to get hard, even though you don't see progress, immediate progress or sustained progress. How confident are you in your commitment?
Right.
And a lot of times people are like, I don't know.
Yeah, and they don't know.
And that's okay.
That's okay, right? So you're asking the question. They've never even contemplated this before, and you're being really honest and really real.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can have this conversation till the cows come home with somebody, but until they're there, you can talk about this shit for 3 hours. But until they're there, until they're actually in it, they're not going to know, and neither will you as a coach.
Right.
So the more you can get it out there,
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
I think the more, and then you can see it's like, well, if they're being honest with themselves, and I'm like, be honest with yourself.
Right.
It's like, I'm not really that committed. Then, okay, then depending on who you want to work with.
Right.
But like, if it's for me, it's like, I only want to work with people who are super committed.
Fair enough.
Because I'm committed at the same time to helping you.
I can't be more committed than you.
Exactly.
And if you tell me 90%, I can't
Exactly.
accept 90% commitment to you. I will be 100% committed.
I've had people on the call be like, you know what? Maybe this is actually not what I need. And
good.
Yeah.
Right.
So like literally like that's also something that people can really start to understand is like maybe this is not what I need. Maybe I need something else. And to me, that's valuable as well.
Yeah. And you're putting in a valuable amount of time into understanding these things. So in the end, you're not wasting anybody's time, energy, frustrations, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, the sort of the next step in the process, somebody sort of comes on board with you. What is like that first period? And I don't know, like, again, like a lot of people are coming in like 10 out of 10 committed, whatever. And they're like, just tell me what to do. And I'm going to do it all. And they're all fired up and then they run into these challenges. But what's happening with you and your clients in the first, week to 2 weeks? Mm-hmm. What's going on? Yeah. I mean, cause you said it earlier, nothing's going to change overnight. Right. So what are the things you start implementing with your clients right away? And again, they're individuals, but in general, in that first week, and where I'm kind of getting to is like, we like to get some wins. Sure. Sure. So what are some of the things you do with your clients to maybe start to establish those things? Yeah.
I mean, I like to, at the end of our assessment, I like to, have some things that people focus on, right? Like, and I would say like low hanging fruits, right? Like things that are super, super easy to implement, get off some quick wins and things like that. And oftentimes those things will come up during that call. So like, or during that assessment. So it's like, like this is probably one thing that you can easily change. And they're like, I can totally do that.
Give me an example. Yeah. Give me an example.
I mean, just like if someone is never eating a vegetable ever, like, and just like, they just don't do it. And it's just like, I don't know. I asked them, it's like, well, I don't know. I just never thought about that. I'm like, well, can you just add like one, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, what vegetables do you like? Oh, I like broccoli. Said no one ever, but says no whatever. Ever. I'm just using an example. I like broccoli. So like, okay, I can add that to like one meal a day. That's fine. Give them something really easy, right? Give them something really easy. And then they can do it consistently. And oftentimes, again, it's like,
it's going to show that level of commitment.
Right.
To you, yeah.
Right. And again, it's like, it often can snowball right into other things. I think one of the things about fitness and health is, again, people throw a million different things at you all at once. So, I mean, we throw 20 different things at you, you end up doing one. Like, what's the point of that?
You lost. You're 19. You're 1 minus 19.
And a lot of people, this is the biggest thing that holds people back is all or nothing mentality, right? Like, I didn't do it perfectly. I didn't do everything that you said, so I failed. Right. And that is the worst one. It's the biggest reason why people quit anything. But also, in my opinion, but also it's the biggest thing that keeps people from actually making progress in any way. It's just that, well, I didn't do it perfectly. And so because I didn't do it perfectly, screw it. Or
they throw their hands up.
Throw their hands up. And we talk about that and like, that's not commitment. That's the opposite of commitment. Right. So, I need you to recognize that even if you don't do everything, you're still doing some things and you need to recognize that. And of course we can work on, getting the other stuff in line, but if you're willing to do something and you're always doing something, then you're doing fine. Right.
So there's a little bit of tough love and there's a little bit of self-realization, and then acknowledgement of, well, let's talk about why you did that. Yeah. Like, where were you? Where was your state of mind? Like, okay, so you did some stuff that you didn't really want to do or you hadn't planned on doing. In fact, you talked yourself out of it before you even went into that situation. You did it anyway. What happened? Yeah. Was it a commitment thing or was it, because at the end, ultimately it isn't.
Yeah. I mean, and then early on in the process too, is just really, again, just setting some expectations of like,
that's immediate up front.
Like that has to be, because again, it's like, you know, if you're working with somebody and we say like, okay, well, this is your goal. Well, if they're not doing what is necessary, then that needs to be brought up, and we need to address that right away. Yeah,
some valuable lessons here for coaches and for clients, for somebody that might be walking in or thinking about getting a nutrition coach and walking in. I mean, Alex, what you're doing is you're outlining, hey, before you go and talk to somebody, if you just spent maybe a little bit more time thinking about the things that you're bringing up right now, like, what am I really committed to doing? What is my, how do my values align with my goals? Like, what is this really about for me? What do I see my distractions really being? What's my history of this stuff? Mm-hmm. What are the things that I can share with my coach to put my coach in a position to help me win? Because that's what you're ultimately doing. And I think you sort of suggested, like, you start stacking the wins, which creates momentum, right? And the little wins count, right? Sure. It's you're not trying to win the war all in one day, right? We're trying to get fit in a week, right? We're not trying to lose 10 pounds in a week. We're just trying to get little wins so that these things happen consistently over time. Yeah. Because wins feel good. Everybody likes winning.
Yeah. And I think early on too, is like, you gotta really, people say like mindset shifts like happen over time, but I think really from the get-go, it's like a plant. You gotta nurture you gotta shape, you gotta start doing it early on. You have to really just remind and just these things, like, things take time. Be patient. Like, like, let's focus on the small victories. Like, those things you gotta nurture, and I think you have to start that right off the bat.
Right. Sure. I don't know if you'd agree in terms of going back to the mindset shifts, which would be, right in the get-go, when you can stack those wins, you can see the mindset shift right away. And now you're working into the whole consistency habits thing. Like, if you're consistently winning, you like to consistently win. So if you can get those going right away, that you'll watch a mindset sometimes just completely flip, and for the positive. It can also go back the other way.
Totally.
Right? If it can backfire if you're not careful. And you're not being consistent, and you're not being compliant. So that's just kind of what they're doing. But along the way, so in terms of getting wins, in terms of measuring those wins, and, I've always loved the term, if you can measure it, you can manage it.
100.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so important in nutrition coaching. It's not just about feeling good, right? It's not just about the hey, you feel good about yourself because you didn't fall off the wagon. It's how does that translate to the results or the goal? Right. And how does that align with the values, that you articulated earlier? Let's talk about use of data. You brought it up earlier. What are some of the data points that you're looking at, for a person? Which ones are important? If you're a coach, which ones are important as a coach, but which ones should be important to the client?
Hey man, I think that's what it is. It's what's important to the client.
There you go.
Yeah. Like again, like if someone came to me and they were like, well, my energy sucks all the time, like I'm tired all day long, then that's something that you would want to make sure that you're assessing, and keeping track of. And it may only be a subjective measure, right? It may only be like, again, it's like, oh, I feel a lot better. I have I'm not taking naps at the end of the day, in the middle of the day like I used to, right? Or, I have the energy to like go play with my kid or wrangle him around, right? Like, whereas before I did not. But if we don't ever like look at those things or keep stock of those things, then then you don't know that they happened, right? So, but it's super important to, again, take it from the client, like what's important to them. Because I've had clients that like, they're like, I don't want to step on a scale. I don't care about what the scale says or whatever. So we don't look at it, right? And you don't need to look at everything, because it also does get overwhelming. Like,
sure.
Again,
what am I supposed to track? What am I not supposed
everything,
to track?
Right? Like, no, like track what's important to you. And even a person who's just doing it on their own, like what's important to you, that's what you need to pay attention to.
So the tracking piece can be a real sticky point for somebody that has a very specific goal, yet doesn't want to track, or the opposite. It's like they're constantly tracking, and it's almost a distraction, and it plays with their head and their self-worth and all of those things. Yeah. So if you have like a weight loss goal, right? Your goal is to lose weight. Let's go back to you want to lose, I think you said this earlier, you want to lose 30 pounds. how important is the data in terms of tracking play into the losing the 30 pounds for that client?
What do you mean?
So as a coach, right? And I need some data up front in order to maybe give you some direction.
Yeah.
So, and I guess where I'm more kind of poking around at is like the importance of tracking with regard to data, when you start, when you stop. How do you value that as a coach, and how do you find a balance with your client that wants to lose that 30 pounds, yet I don't really have a starting point for you. I don't really know what's going on in terms of your current intake, what your macros look like, all of that. How do you communicate to your client that it's important for now, but it might not be forever?
Right. I mean, again, it's just, what is your goal, right? Like if your goal is to lose 30 pounds and that's your goal, okay, well then we need to track it, right? We need to make sure that because again, it's like people, what you just said, like what gets managed gets measured. A lot of times I'll run into people, they'll be like, I gained 20 pounds and I don't understand where it came from. Like, you didn't put it on 20 pounds like overnight. It's like, usually when I dig deeper, I ask them like, oh yeah, well, like I was doing something and I stopped, I stopped tracking my food. I stopped tracking my weight. I stopped tracking everything. And yeah, that's what happened. You lost awareness of it. So again, if it's important to you, like you need to have some kind of awareness with it. But on the flip side, like what you were saying is like, if it starts to, mess with you a little bit, right? Like then you have to decide whether or not like, is that something that's actually serving me right now or not, right? And I just did a podcast with a former nutrition client of mine. We talked all about like non-scale victories or just anything like that. But like you got to sometimes zoom out. And I mean, again, like you may be tracking this one piece of data, but it's only one piece. Right. We have to look at everything as it's not the only definitive thing. Like, again, like even if your clothes are changing sizes, like, okay, if you're clothes are changing sizes, but you feel like dog shit, like then
there's context.
So like we have to look at the big picture, and obviously like zooming out, looking at more pieces of data is more helpful. But again, it's still going to be like what's important to you, right? What's important to the client.
So again, it's drawing those lines, and so data is important.
Yeah.
What data is important is what's important to the client.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to kind of simplify
to their goal, right? Like, that's
Want to lose 30 pounds? Well, then we should probably be tracking what's happening on the scale.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're a competitive weightlifter and you have to make weight, then you have
the scale's important.
The scale's important. Like that, and they know, and they would know that. Right. They would know that, and so like, and if they were like, I don't want to weigh myself, and I'm like, well, then you have to be okay with not making weight because we're not looking at it. We can't be mad about something that we're not doing what we need to do to figure out like how to manage it.
Right. Those are the real like reality conversations that happen. So, man, you're talking about so many things and how you connect with clients and the questions that you're asking them and the specifics that go into each client, the nuance, hey, we have to figure these things out. I have to work with these people. There's good days, there's bad days. Yeah. That's a lot of energy, man.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work for a coach. There's a ton of value in that for the client when you're doing it that way versus we talked about the templates. Right. It's a different kind of coaching, right? So the question I would have for you, and we go back to, what's sustainable, from a healthy diet and lifestyle perspective within the business that you're in right now, how sustainable is what you're doing, man? Because I mean, we talked about numbers of clients and things like that. You got a serious client load, right? And again, that has to be closely managed and measured because you have to make a living, right? And you also have, things that you need to do or want to do in your life. Right. How sustainable is this, and how have you assessed that?
Yeah. Ask me in like 10 years.
I love that answer because that's usually what I tell people. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm getting started. I'm, like, well, I want to do what you're doing. I was like, well, come talk to me in 10 years.
Yeah, no, for real though. No, I mean, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think I've got like, ask me in 10 years, but mostly I have a lot of systems that help me, right? Like, start to say organized, and I've figured out like what is the limit of people that I can sustain and take on. And this is also like the only thing that I do. So I think a lot of people, sometimes coaches and stuff like that, it's
a hobby.
Well, it's not a hobby for them maybe, but it's like a side gig, right? Like I went all in on it. So this is what I do. And I think, I'm not saying that you have to go all in on something, but I think if you want to be really great at it, you got to go all in on it. Yeah. And it's scary sometimes. It's scary as shit for me, but like, you know, it's something I would not have changed. I would not do this like as a side thing, you know. Looking into starting to bring on other coaches.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. Yeah.
Like I brought on a coach this past year, like as my assistant, and you know, that's really helped. So now, like, you know, she has her clients and I can remove some of my clients, and then I can still do the things that I need to do and make the money that I need to make and all that kind of stuff. I think a big thing too is just really, as a coach, getting a lot of clarity on who you want to serve.
Right.
So, like, who's a fit? And, of course, like, when you're first starting, like, when I first started off, like, individual coaching, I took on people
you took whoever.
And then, of course, right, that's where we started at. But then you realize, like, you know what? There are people that are not fits, and they are going to drain more energy than is worth. Maybe they're fit for another person. That's fine. But recognizing that and learning to say no to people, setting boundaries, right? Like, I think that's important. So really the clients that I have, for the most part, like, I mean, I would say all of them are people that are aligned with people who I would want to work with.
Perfect.
And so that basically it's not as much energy. I'm not sitting here like,
right.
I've had clients.
You're not dreading going into a call.
I'm being 100% honest. I've had clients where I'm like, man, I really don't want to talk to this person. Like, I mean, and that feels terrible because I didn't get into this to do that. Right.
The goal is to help people.
Yeah. I didn't get into this to like, and I know I'm not being a service to them. And so, and again, like that's also, I think with coaches, like you got to be really honest with yourself and be willing to let go of people, which is hard because for sometimes, and if you are all in on yourself, this is how you put food on the table. Yep. And so it can be very hard to like let people go out of fear and like that kind of scarcity, like, oh, like I can't just let these clients go, but you should.
Yeah, quantitatively you're losing money, but also qualitatively you're questioning your ability. Like, are you sometimes?
Oh, like, yeah, you're
I've failed this person because that's why I got into this business, was to help them, and I'm not as good as I thought I was. Yeah. And what did I do wrong?
Right, and you're also not helping them either. Right. So like it's pointless. It's better to just let it go. You know. So yeah.
So you kind of reached a point where you're like, I know how many clients I can have.
Yeah. I know who I want,
but this
who I don't want.
Yeah. And by the way, you just mentioned what we're talking about here is a really, important thing for those coaches that have gone all in, right? Yeah. And they are really doing a lot of great things. And they're every time they come to the table, they're bringing their A game and they just want to get better. And they've figured out a lot of things the hard way, which is doing it. You got to do the work, right? Like, hey, I started this business, however, they left another business and, usually it comes with a little bit of surprise. Yeah. You walk into it going, oh, fuck, I got to pay taxes. like, wait, how do I do this now? And then you figured out the next year you figure out, okay, so now I know how to be a little bit more wise with my time and maybe bring on the clients that I like. And man, I'm really working a lot of hours. I'm 60 hours, hours a week. I want to make more money next year. And I figured out the tax thing. I figured out how to do all that. I want to make more money next year. How do I do that without burning
yourself out?
More hours. Yeah. Oh, do I raise prices? Do I, do I put people in groups? Do I do all this? So you mentioned bringing on an assistant, and that's a huge undertaking because now you've got energy and trust that you have to put into somebody else. Talk about that process. Like if and maybe some advice to other coaches like you that are at that stage. I want to scale up. Yeah. But I want to be careful about this. Sure. And I want to do it slowly and I want to do it the right way. Where did you start? What did you do?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking about it. This is exactly like I started really. I mean, I was coaching for. I started my business in 2018, so it's been 3 years before I brought on somebody else. And it was really out of necessity. Because last year was insane busy, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, I mean, 2020, everybody was at home. The average person gained like 30 pounds.
There's opportunity there.
There's a lot of opportunity. So like it got really, really busy. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. I have the systems in place. I think that's an important thing. Like you don't have to have everything figured out, but you need to have your systems, at least like how you onboard people and like how you organize and keep track of things, because you need to pass that off. You gotta, it's consistency. Right. You can't be doing something, because again, people are going to expect something from you, or they just expect, because they're seeing you. So everybody you bring on needs to be pretty much on the same page, right?
You can't just be in your head. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So you got to have really good systems in place.
Lead follow-up.
Yeah, like
sales systems, right?
100%. Like
communication systems.
Even how we do like consults and stuff like that, like making sure like that's consistent, right? So have a good, and if you've been coaching for a while,
you get all that.
You should have that. Otherwise, like, I don't know
what are you doing?
Like, what are you doing? Like, so yeah. But brought on assistant. And we were talking about this earlier. I've been working with her as a client. She was my client because I worked with her actually when I was with Shrugged. So she came out of even.
So you've known her for
I've known her for a long time, like for like 5 years, and I've worked with her through like a bunch of stuff, changes in her life, and she's she knows me. And I know her.
It's a deep-rooted relationship there.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things that we were talking about is that the values align, our philosophies align, like what we find important in terms of how to help people and coach people and how to approach that align. I think that's really the most challenging part. She's my only employee, but I've worked in companies where they brought people on and they just were not aligned.
Oh, I've done it.
Yeah. And it does not work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
It's frustrating and it's expensive.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It from time, energy, and monetary cost.
Yeah. And so I think that's really the important thing, is finding somebody who aligns. So, if I bring on other people, they're probably going to come with people that I have coached either currently or in the past, because there's a relationship there, and I can know, and they know, I don't say like I've shaped them, but it has, right? And I think that's what helps make it cohesive.
Absolutely. So, and that takes time. It doesn't happen. So it's one thing to think about putting a person in a position and having them take the system, but that's the same as handing somebody a template that's your nutrition client, right? And you're expecting them to follow this, but there's so many missing pieces. I kind of liken your story to my relationship with Cece. We worked together. We actually rode bikes together, in a group, and talked shop for over a year before we finally, walked in and were working out of the same place. And then over time, that fostered a different level of the relationship specific to now we really are aligned. Like in this concept of you never really know until you're there. Right. And so it's hard to know. So if you're a coach and you're out there, hey, I really want to scale my business. I want to level this thing up. You need to start building those relationships outside, right, as well. And listening to guys like we're talking to today with Alex, specific to, hey, if you think your values align with where Alex is, maybe Alex knows some other people that he's not really ready to bring on yet, but could really align well with yours. But start those relationships now. It's just like the relationships of the conversations you're having with potential clients. The people you're talking to now are not going to be your clients tomorrow. Right. It's the whole, like with the social media game, what you're doing is you're building a relationship over time, and you're building this trust or this it's a relationship, right? And you're building it over time. So you're putting yourself in a position to where when the time comes, the opportunity presents itself, you have the opportunities. And again, I think that's just there's this, I don't know what the right term here is, but I don't know if it's instant gratification, but people want it now. They're like, I want to scale this thing now. I just want to be huge. I want to do what Alex is doing, and I want to do it in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
It took you 3 years to get to where you're at. And along the way, you just told us about all these relationships you built and all the things that you've done and whatever else. Just encourage people to slow down a little bit and listen to the advice that you're giving here about keeping it close to home. Yeah. And if I look out on the floor here at, if our coaches, nearly every one of them was a referral from another coach.
Yeah.
Here. And it started with a conversation about values and where you're coming from a philosophical perspective.
And I think too, one of the things too I want to mention too is like, you don't have to scale. Like it's not like, here's the thing. A nutrition coach on their own, if they're decent, right, with a roster of about 30 to 40 clients, like not even that much, can take home like a decent paycheck
for sure.
Like, $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Right. Can do it.
That's great money.
Can do it. Totally. And yeah, you don't have to scale, but it's like, why do you want to scale? Right. Like for me, it's like, yeah, I want to help more people. Right. I want to help more people. There are people that were coming to me. I was not physically capable. Also too, it's another thing too. It's like, I want to help my assistant.
Right.
Establish herself, right? And like be able to be
part of that process,
be part of that thing, right? Like these are things you want to help other people. And like Lori, same thing. Like she does the same thing. It's like, I want to see other people thrive,
succeed,
right?
Yeah.
So again, like, why do you want to scale? Because it's also totally fine
to not scale.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some places where, we need to scale, but like, as far as like one-on-one coaching, there's no shortage of people.
That's true.
Like, I think that's another thing too. It's like people get in that scarcity mindset, like, oh, I'm not going to get any clients. I'm missing out. Like, I'm not going to make any money. Like, I'm missing out on this money. It's like, yo, like there's no shortage.
Yeah. And by the way, just open up social media or whatever. Like it just continues to get more unhealthy and more confusing.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like you don't have to scale. So, maybe sometimes we feel pressure because we see other people do it, but you just, again, I think your business has to align with what you want.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just like nutrition, man. Like, it's got to align with what you want too. If you're, if this is a side hustle for you and whatever, then fine. Just keep it a side hustle. Like whatever.
Just be honest about it.
Just be honest about it, And, if you don't want to scale, you're happy with what you're doing, and then that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't feel like you have to do anything just because somebody else. You don't have to make ebooks. You don't have to make coaching programs or whatever. Do you want to do these things? Then do them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's such great advice. I mean, there's so
literally,
much.
I've not made I literally just started making ebooks with a friend of mine. But like, that's it. Like, I've literally been in 3 years and they were like, yeah, made an ebook. Like, I didn't want to make an ebook yet.
So that's what I was going to get to, is because, I just suggested the social media thing and how, unhealthy it can be or what it can show you in terms of health. I think what you've done with your social media is incredible, right? And you're doing it all by yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
But the example that you're setting there in terms of just everything from a strategy perspective, from the content perspective, from the uncomplicating things perspective, and really trying to create a relationship with your fans, with your followers. I feel a real connection to it because it's like, all right, and I hate this word. I've learned to hate this word. I didn't used to, but the whole authenticity thing.
Yeah.
Because it's so generic, and I think it's so misused so often. It has a negative connotation almost anymore. But what you see there is, in my getting to know you, and this is what I would have hoped would have happened, was exactly what you see there is what you get, and there is no. And so, if along that note, in terms of trying to scale, don't try to be somebody that you're not. Right. Yeah. Don't try and put forth a persona. If you know that that's who you are right now, then stop it right now. And for God's sakes, don't try to scale.
Right.
Because if you're already building that quote unquote lie, right? And you're already putting out content that you don't really believe in, or you don't really. Stop writing ebooks. Stop trying to write an ebook, because you're going to be stuck with that, and that's going to follow you forever. You can't undo that.
Well, you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also going to, I mean, you're going to hate doing it, or it's going to cause you to be burnt out, or just be like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore.
Find a different way, because there's so many ways, and there's, like you said,
do it any way you want.
So many people to help.
Like, I remember when I was working at Shrugged, and like, you know, Doug, he was always saying, it's like, we can do whatever we want. Like, it doesn't have to be anything. Yeah. It's like, we can do whatever we want.
And
like,
you can.
Yeah, you can.
And you did.
It can look however you want. It can be however, again, it's just got to align with what goes with you, you know? Like, you're like what you value. We're going back to that same thing. It's just the same thing. Like social media, like I don't post. I don't feel pressure. I'm not pressuring myself to post every single day, because that's not what I wanted to do. I don't want to do that.
Right.
So when I make posts, like I've heard this, like, well, you got to post more consistently if you want to grow your following. Guess what? I'm good. Yeah. I know people with like 1,000 followers who are making like 30K a month. And I know people who have like 300,000 followers who are barely paying their bills.
Yeah, growing my following is not my goal.
Yeah. Right. Like what's my goal is, like, I want to make quality, great content for people, and I want to, you know, educate and help people and engage with people and be, like you said, be myself. Like, that's it.
Mission accomplished.
Right. I don't have to do it the way that you've been doing it, because
it's the same as coaching, man. It's the same as nutrition. It's the same as fitness, 100, right?
100.
Yeah.
100.
Yeah. And look, man, the thing that comes along with that, as we're sort of getting to the close here, is how relaxed you are, right? And content. I can tell that you are in what you're doing, which is so valuable. And like, I not eavesdropping, but I could hear you in the other room, you know, earlier, you know, having those coaching conversations with your clients, and it's the same as the conversation we're having now. It's just so natural. It's so free, and it's, you know, as a coach, it's so liberating once you get to that point to not have or feel that pressure. Just know what you're doing is the right thing. Because you've been doing it that way, and it aligns, and it just makes perfect sense. And in the end, it gets results.
You're gonna be the best if you just do
It's okay to change.
Yeah,
it's okay to change. I see so many people, so many clients that are stuck in a pathway, in a job, in a relationship, or whatever. It's okay to change. It's not, doesn't mean it's going to be easy to do, but it's okay to do that. So give that some thought, reassess your values, reassess what you're doing, how that aligns, and just be fucking happy doing what you want to do. Yeah.
If you're happy doing what you want, it goes with anything. If you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to be really good at it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, that's it, man. That's my old man wisdom. I don't know.
That's a great
OG wisdom.
That is a great way to kind of wrap it up, man. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So look, Alex, if people want to learn a little bit more about you, about your coaching style, connect with you, where do they go, man? Where do they find
the best
you?
place is Instagram. So my Instagram is Alex Q Maclin. I'm super creative, as you know. Like, my website is alexmaclin.com. Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably the next step I got to figure out is like branding. Like, and again, ask me in 10 years, like where this goes.
Like, you have no idea what you're doing is what you're going to tell me.
That's what I'm saying. I have no idea what I'm doing. So like figuring out like, how do I brand it other than just me? Right. So that's the next, that's the project. That's like what I get to learn. Right. Like this is all exciting. What I get to learn.
Yeah. You can look at that at two different ways. Like, oh my God, I got to change this, or oh my God, I get to change.
I get to learn this.
I get to change this.
Get to learn all these experiences.
Yeah, that said, I mean, you just mentioned kind of the website thing, but you got any projects or anything you're excited about right now that you can share?
Yeah, I'm just working on stuff with a friend of mine. We're going to be putting out some guides and things like that. Cool. And with Youre, with Paragon, like we might be doing some, of course, like with this situation with everything, but we might be doing some in-person events and, you know, doing some seminars and things like that. I love traveling, so I love meeting people, and that's something I haven't got to do since I've been on my own. Really, it's just just travel around and do like how I used to do it with Shrug,
with Barbell Shrugged,
just get to meet people and do seminars and talk and share knowledge. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, man, I wish you the best of luck in that.
Yeah,
and I want to thank you for coming down and
thank you for having me on
and hanging with me today. Yeah. It's been fun, but it's also been educational, and that's why I'm doing this, man. Is is, like you said, I get to do this. I feel so fortunate. Thanks for being part of it for me and for the audience. And man, I look forward to maybe having you back here someday at one of those road tours or road shows that you're doing, and get you in front of some folks.
All right,
man.
Right on.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Iron Sights. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can support our mission by hitting the subscribe button, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with a friend. I'll see you on the next episode.